It's always a sad time when the Cheltenham Festival comes to an end, and alas, we have had the final race of the 2019 edition. It has been a brilliant week, but we can now at last draw breath and reflect on the highs and lows. With me to do so is Racing Post senior writer Lee Mottershead. Lee, it's been an amazing week. I'm not quite sure where to begin, so we'll do so at the very start. Tuesday, a day that didn't quite go to plan in many races.
No, it didn't do. It started off with two Grade 1 wins for the guy who ended up winning the biggest one of all, Willie Mullins, with Classical Dream and Duc de Genièvre. But then we went into the champion hurdle, which was built around three horses, Apple's Jade, Bouverdere and Lorena, and they all blew out. Bouverdere didn't get around. Apple's Jade ran a bitterly disappointing race, and less so but still disappointing was Lorena. And what we ended up with was Espoir d'Hélène, a horse who had been fancied but wasn't one of the leading contenders, galloping past the line in the McManus green and gold, while his riderless owner's dual champion hurdler, Bouverdere, galloped alongside him. It made for a very strange race, and in some ways an unsatisfying race, because the big names didn't produce their form. One of them didn't get around. But for Gavin Cromwell and Mark Walsh, a fabulous moment, and a reminder that for all that we build up these stories, these scripts going into the races, it's a sport of great unpredictability, and the champion hurdle showed that.
That's it, yeah. Well, I think that's why we love the sport so much, isn't it? Because you can talk and talk, and you can anticipate, you can plot what might be the tactics, but at the end of the day, it's sport, and you can't predict what's going to happen, which is what keeps us there. But the Wednesday did perhaps go a bit more as we might have expected. Four winning favourites, one of which, of course, was the magnificent Altior. Yeah,
I mean, Wednesday was a day that revolved around those two horses, two real public horses, Altior and Tiger Roll. Altior's champion chase was very different to Tiger Roll's cross-country chase, in the sense that Tiger Roll had his race won a long way out. As he galloped off the cross-country track onto the racecourse proper, he had a big lead, became ever bigger, and we were able to really salute him up the home straight as a quadruple Cheltenham Festival winner, who now heads hopefully back to the Grand National. He's just a wonderful little horse. Altior is now a joint world record holder. He equalled Big Bucks' record for consecutive jumps wins. But there were real sweaty palms during that champion chase. In between the penultimate and final fence, he lost the lead to So Royal. He looked in trouble. But there isn't a horse who finishes a jumps race with the zest and vigour of Altior. And he really powered up that hill to take the crown. Not at his best on the ground, but an incredible horse who was, again, just, as it turned out, unbeatable. He just keeps winning races. And for Nico de Banville and Nicky Henderson, he delivered on the day that in his year matters most.
That's it. He really kind of grounded out. He stuck his neck out and he showed that amazing determination. Another horse who did so, perhaps not in the same class or certainly not the same winning machine, but Frodon really stuck his neck out under Bryony Frost. They're a magnificent partnership, aren't they? That was part of what we've dubbed the golden hour on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it had echoes of that night in London 2012, when Jess Ennis, Greg Rutherford and Mo Farah took gold for Team GB within the space of an hour. Here we had Frodon and Paisley Park triumphing, and what was marvellous was that they're lovely, they're smashing horses, and they represent smashing people. The racing world is absolutely head over heels in love with Bryony Frost, and understandably so. You know, we spoke to her early on today. She'd been doing a round of interviews. She saw us. We asked, would you speak? And she just was fantastic again. She gave the horse a wonderful ride in what was a really good Ryanair chase. And then the way she spoke afterwards, she conveys the union between horse and human better than anybody I've ever heard. And then we had Paisley Park winning the Stayers hurdle. He looked in trouble at one point, but then when he made his move under Aidan Coleman, a move very reminiscent to his victory in the Cleve hurdle, the roar that went up from the stands when they knew the favourite, the really heavily backed favourite, was going to strike was a marvellous thing. And Emma Lavelle, his trainer, is widely admired, respected and liked for good reason, and so is his owner, Andrew Gemmell. And we all know Andrew's story. He's been blind since birth. Life therefore hasn't been easy for him, but you would never know that to listen to him, because he's a wonderful guy. You know, we had these great pictures afterwards of Paul Keeley with Andrew in the winners' enclosure, the two of them embracing, and after they'd embraced, Andrew's line to Paul was, I'm so chuffed to have met you. You know, he just won the Stayers Hurdle and he was thinking of other things. He's a superman, really great for the sport, and that was a great hour for the sport. Racing has had difficult times the last few weeks and months. There's been antagonism, there's been arguments, there's been a lot of negativity, and that was a reminder of what a wonderful sport this is and how many of the people are wonderful people.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking to Paul Keeley actually afterwards, I think he's had a few winning bets, which has obviously been good for him, but I think that was one of the highlights of his week, actually, Andrew Gamble sort of being so excited to meet him. And also, I was one of those people that was roaring Paisley Park home. Absolutely love him. I've said it before, I'll say it again, he's just a wonderful horse. Yeah. On to Friday, and the Gold Cup, it promised a huge amount, and I think we can say it delivered. Yeah,
it gave us another great Gold Cup story. Maybe not the one we quite expected, with Presenting Percy blowing out, Native River running an honourable race in 4th, Clandizobo 5th. They were the big three going into it. But the story that we got was Willie Mullins finally ending his Gold Cup hoodoo. Willie Mullins, a racing legend who's won pretty much everything else, not least here. But apart from the Gold Cup, he'd had 6 seconds in the race leading up to this one. He only had one horse of his 4 runners still in contention going out onto the final circuit, but that one horse delivered with Alboon Photo, who was at the centre of that bizarre race at Punchestown last April when Paul Townend steered him off the course approaching the final fence. You know, that was a sort of race where it could easily be played out on a question of sport, and Sue Barker would say, what happens next? Yeah. Well, we now know what happens next. They win the Gold Cup. And it was a wonderful end to that story. And Willie deserved to win a Gold Cup. Paul Townend is a fabulous, unassuming, humble guy who works sterlingly well as Ruby's deputy in the Mullins Yard. He's on course to regain his Irish Jockeys Championship. But most important of all now, he's a Cheltenham Gold Cup winning rider, and he enjoyed this glorious redemption on Alboon Photo, and I think everyone who was watching and listening to him was delighted for him.
That's it. You alluded to the fact he might well be champion jockey in Ireland again. That's if Rachel Blackmore doesn't stop him. She's clearly a rider on fire.
Yeah, she absolutely is. And Rachel Blackmore was again part of a narrative, a wonderful narrative for women riders at this Cheltenham Festival, a real watershed festival for women jockeys. 2 wins for Rachel Blackmore, 1 win for Bryony Frost, 1 win for Lizzie Kelly. They are superb jockeys, and they're great for the sport as well. They send out a wonderful message that if you are a young girl as well as a young boy, if you have the talent and dedication and determination, you've got a great chance of making it in horse racing. And they were a really positive narrative through the week. It hasn't all been positive, of course it hasn't. The National Chase delivered difficult headlines again, and we lost a horse there, Bally Ward. And this was a day, Gold Cup day, when we lost Invitation Only, and we lost Sir Eric in the Triumph Hurdle. He, of course, is one of the headline horses going into this meeting. We had time before the race when he was featured on the big screen while being reshod. I just fell ever more in love with him in those moments, and then for him to be lost during the race was heartbreaking. This can be a cruel sport, and there's no point pretending that there aren't times when it delivers tremendous sadness, but it's also a sport that delivers tremendously uplifting moments, and across all 4 days, not least here today in the Cheltenham Gold Cup, it did that again.